Imagine, if you will, a wedding anniversary where the digital world remains hauntingly still. No one arrives to wish you well, not your closest confidants, not the icons of industry who once stood beside you at the altar, not the global celebrities who flew across oceans to celebrate what was promised to be the dawn of a new, enlightened royal era. Just silence. A complete, unmistakable, and devastatingly public silence played out in front of 4.5 million followers who were all watching, waiting for a sign of life that never came. This was the reality for Harry and Meghan this past weekend. It was the beginning of the most chaotic, self-defeating 72 hours the Sussex operation has produced since they abandoned the structure of the royal family 6 years ago. The most extraordinary aspect of this unfolding tragedy is that nobody did this to them. There was no tabloid conspiracy, no palace briefing, and no hostile journalist lurking in the shadows. They walked into every single moment of this disaster themselves, one social media post at a time, planting the seeds of their own public humiliation in full view of the world. 8 years of marriage. By any honest measure of public relations, this should have been the simplest victory of the year, an easy win. A soft, warm, aspirational moment that the world was actually ready to embrace. The original wedding in 2018 captured a global audience in the billions. The images from that day are among the most photographed and recognizable royal moments of the modern era. All the Sussex operation needed to do was post something simple, something dignified, and let the natural warmth of the public return to them. Instead, they chose to flood the zone with a frantic, disorganized display of ego and commerce. They unleashed a multi-image montage, a tribute video set to pop music, and a new line of branded products tied directly to the date of their union. But tucked inside these carefully selected images, hidden within a feed meant for 4.5 million people, was a single photograph that by every professional account should never have left the private archive. The photograph appears to show Prince Harry on the wedding day itself, caught in what looks visibly like a heated, unkind exchange. The interpretation now circulating with lightning speed across the globe suggests that the prince was captured in a moment of friction with the nanny of the Wales family. Small children, visible in the frame, appear to several observers to look wary and uncomfortable. Given the years of speculation regarding the tensions behind the scenes on that day, this still frame is now being read by viewers everywhere in the most unflattering light possible. There are two ways to interpret this staggering failure of judgment. One reading is that this was a deliberate, provocative editorial choice. The Sussex operation has made aggressive choices before, and using a photograph to push a specific, perhaps vengeful narrative would not be a new tactic. The other reading, and perhaps the more damaging one for their reputation as a serious entity, is that this was simply a mistake born of incompetence. It looks less like the work of a calculated PR machine, and more like the act of a single person scrolling through a personal photo roll, picking images on instinct with no second pair of eyes to review the selection before it went live to the world. Either reading is catastrophic. If it was deliberate, it means the operation decided a moment of spite was worth more commercially than the sanctity of a clean anniversary post. If it was accidental, it means there is no longer anyone competent left in the room to catch a mistake before it becomes a global headline. Reports from the inner circles of the industry now suggest that their production company has been pared down to a skeleton crew of only 2 people. What remains is what Hollywood dismissively calls a label, an entity that exists primarily to attach its branding to the work of others because it can no longer generate its own. In this context, the misposted photograph is not a strategy. It is the inevitable result of an operation that has lost its staff, its discipline, and its direction. The carelessness did not end there. The tribute video, meant to mark 8 years of marriage, featured a cake with 4 candles. 4, not 8. This suggests a level of laziness that is almost breathtaking. Either the team failed to count, or the imagery was repurposed from an anniversary 4 years ago and dropped into the feed without a refresh. When a brand loses the ability to catch a detail that glaring, it has lost the right to be taken seriously as a premium global player. But the most haunting detail of the weekend was the digital ghost town that followed their announcement. The 2018 wedding was the most A-list event in modern celebrity history. Oprah Winfrey, Serena Williams, Elton John, the Clooneys, the titans of entertainment and media were all in that room. 8 years later, not one of them reposted the anniversary tribute. Not one shared a sweet throwback. Not one offered a public gesture of any kind. In the world of the elite, silence is a professional statement. These celebrities manage their public presence with surgical precision. They know the cost of saying nothing. When an entire social circle of global power players simultaneously declines to acknowledge a major public marker, it is not a scheduling coincidence. It is a coordinated, polite, and unmistakable cooling. The world, it seems, is finally respecting the privacy of Meghan and Harry, except for Meghan and Harry themselves. This is the beginning of the end of the Sussex dream, where the lights are still on, but the room is undeniably empty. The descent from the heights of global social relevance is rarely a sudden cliff. It is a slow, agonizing cooling, a gradual retreat of the tide that leaves a brand stranded on the shore of its own making. To understand the true depth of the humiliation that unfolded this anniversary weekend, one must look back at the golden hour of 2018. That day in Windsor was not merely a wedding. It was the ultimate coronation of a new celebrity court. The guest list read like a manifesto of global power. Oprah Winfrey, the undisputed queen of American media. George and Amal Clooney, the architects of international prestige. Serena Williams, the titan of sport. And Sir Elton John, the musical soul of the British monarchy. These were not just guests. They were the gatekeepers of the A-list. They were the people whose very presence signaled that Harry and Meghan had achieved a level of cultural velocity that transcended the royal family itself. But 8 years on, the landscape has shifted into a desolate, frozen tundra. As the anniversary post landed in front of those 4.5 million followers, the world watched in real time for the inevitable wave of celebrity affection. We waited for the nostalgic reposts, the heart emojis from superstars, the sweet throwback stories from those who had occupied the front pews. Instead, the world witnessed something far more devastating, a coordinated, absolute, and chilling silence. Gayle King, who has been perhaps the warmest and most consistent American press ally the Sussexes have ever had, said nothing. Serena Williams, who in recent months has appeared notably more distant and was described as lukewarm at best regarding recent brand launches, said nothing. The Clooneys, Priyanka Chopra, and the Beckhams all remained silent. Even Sir Elton John, whose image Meghan pointedly included in her own anniversary tribute video as a way to signal continued intimacy, did not reciprocate with so much as a perfunctory comment. In the highly calibrated world of global celebrity, silence is never an accident. It is a professional strategy. These icons do not manage their own social media accounts in a vacuum. They are surrounded by sophisticated communications teams who know exactly when a major anniversary falls. They know when a public gesture is expected from a close friend, and they know the exact cost of withholding that gesture. In the currency of Hollywood, a like is a soft endorsement, but a public silence is a hard no. When an entire room full of the most famous people on Earth, all of whom were active on social media that same week, posting about other friends and other projects, simultaneously declines to acknowledge your milestone, it is not a scheduling conflict. It is a collective decision to sever the public link. This is what a coordinated cooling looks like. The social circle that once formed a protective ring around the couple has retreated, leaving them to navigate the storm alone. The world is now witnessing the irony of a lifetime, captured perfectly by the commentary of Queen Esther, who noted that the world is finally respecting the privacy of Harry and Meghan, even if Harry and Meghan refuse to respect it themselves. Think about the weight of that observation. For years, the Sussex narrative was built on the desperate need for privacy, a plea that served as the foundation for their exit from the United Kingdom. Yet, 8 years later, they are the ones flooding the digital zone with personal archives and commercial hooks, while the rest of the elite world quietly closes the door. The celebrities who once championed them have realized that the Sussex brand has become a liability, a vortex of drama and victimhood that offers no social or professional return on investment. But perhaps the most stinging detail in this social collapse is the identity of the only people who did offer public tributes. As the A-list stayed silent, the only visible anniversary wishes reportedly came from airline crew members who had been briefed in advance about the date. This is the new reality of the Sussex operation. They have traded the genuine, unbought endorsement of the global elite for the scripted politeness of service staff. From a wedding guest list of international power players to a tribute roster of flight attendants, that is the trajectory of the social ladder they now find themselves on. This silence is the sound of a vacuum. It is the sound of a brand that has exhausted the patience of its most powerful supporters. Celebrity friends are professionals. They know how to spot a sinking ship, and they know when the narrative has turned from inspirational escape to chaotic failure. By refusing to share, repost, or even acknowledge the anniversary, the Hollywood elite has sent an unmistakable message. You are on your own. The Sussexes wanted to be global titans, independent of the crown, buoyed by the love of the world's most famous people. But as this weekend proved, when you spend 8 years burning bridges and turning every personal milestone into a commercial pitch, eventually you find yourself standing in a very large, very expensive room, talking to no one but yourself. The 4.5 million followers were there, the cameras were rolling, and the lighting was perfect, but the guests had already left through the back door long ago. Now, we must turn our attention to the kitchen. In the world of high-end lifestyle branding, a kitchen is never just a room where food is prepared. It is the altar of the home. It is the visual heart of an aspirational life, the stage upon which a creator performs the ritual of quiet luxury. For Meghan, as she prepares to launch her new lifestyle empire, American Riviera Orchard, the kitchen was supposed to be the anchor of her entire aesthetic. But as the world looked closer at the promotional content released this weekend, a chilling realization began to set in. The kitchen, we are seeing the one with the distinctive orange-brown wood cabinets, the copper pots hanging with staged precision from the ceiling, and the soft, golden light filtering through a farmhouse window is not her own. As Tom Sykes of the Daily Beast reported with devastating clarity in a column titled "Meghan's Taco Bell Kitchen," the anchor of the Sussex lifestyle brand is a rented set. While the promotional video shows Meghan leaning against a window, pretending to drink tea with an expression pitched somewhere between seductive and aspirational, she is doing so in a rented farmhouse. She is a lifestyle creator who, by every available indication, cannot or will not film her lifestyle in her own home. This leads us to the question that is currently echoing through the gated communities of Montecito. Why? Why would one of the most famous women in the world, living in a mansion bought for nearly $15 million, feel the need to seek shelter in someone else's kitchen to sell her vision of home? The answer, whispered by neighbors and confirmed by those familiar with the local social hierarchy, is a profound blow to the Sussex prestige. The mansion, purchased in 2020, has reportedly not been renovated since the day they moved in. In the specific, hyper-competitive atmosphere of Montecito, where conspicuous renovation is a primary hobby of the ultra-wealthy, the Sussex house is increasingly being described as a laughingstock. In a town where the baseline expectation is that you remodel from the footprint up the moment the ink is dry on the deed, the fact that they have not touched even the kitchen after 6 years is a massive social tell. It is a visible signal that the financial firepower required to maintain the illusion of royal-scale living in California simply does not exist. The kitchen, in this reading, is no longer just a room, it is a balance sheet sitting in plain view. The contrast here is not just with their neighbors, but with their own past. Consider Frogmore Cottage, the property the Sussexes occupied as working senior royals before their departure. That renovation, paid for by the British taxpayer and the institutional resources of the Crown, was reported to cost in the region of £2 million. Meghan was directly involved in every design decision, crafting a space that was bright, modern, and light-filled. When the bill was carried by the institution, the result was a masterpiece of modern luxury. But when the brand must stand on its own commercial earnings, the reality is far shabbier. 6 years after their escape to California, the dream of a bespoke, curated interior has been replaced by the necessity of a rented set. The lifestyle being sold is a mirage, a carefully lit stage designed to hide a house that is frozen in 2020. This is the gossip moral of the entire kitchen story, and it is a moral that the rented farmhouse video has written in plain sight for anyone paying attention. The promise of the Sussex post-royal project was built on a vision of California living that was supposed to be superior to the constraints of the palace. It was supposed to be a life of independence and unmatched luxury, but you cannot manufacture a lifestyle empire from a kitchen your neighbors are mocking behind your back. Sykes's local sources view the unremodeled home as a significant indicator of failing momentum. In the world of the global elite, if you aren't moving forward, you are moving backward. By retreating to a rented farmhouse to film her content, Meghan has inadvertently admitted that her own reality is not worth showing. She is selling a dream that she herself is not living. When you are a lifestyle influencer, your home is your credibility. If you have to borrow someone else's stove to sell your jam, the audience begins to wonder what else is being borrowed. The rented kitchen is the symbol of a brand that has lost its foundation. It is the visible evidence of a project that is struggling to generate the capital required to sustain its own myth. And in the unforgiving light of a Montecito afternoon, the neighbors know exactly what they are looking at. A couple who stepped off a royal pedestal only to find themselves unable to afford the climb back up. This is not the victory they promised. It is a beautifully lit, expertly edited retreat from a reality they can no longer maintain. Beyond the deafening silence of their former friends and the visual deception of a rented kitchen, there lies a deeper, more structural rot within the Sussex operation. A professional communications machine is designed to act as a filter, a shield, and a mirror. It filters out the damaging, shields the principal from their own worst instincts, and mirrors back to the world an image of curated perfection. But this anniversary weekend, the world did not see a professional machine. We saw the raw, unedited, and increasingly frantic output of a brand that has lost its internal compass. The first and most unforgivable evidence of this collapse was the selection of the anniversary photographs themselves. Among the montage intended to celebrate 8 years of union was an image that left royal observers in a state of collective shock. It was not a romantic portrait. It was a captured moment of friction. The photograph appears to show Prince Harry on his wedding day in 2018, visibly embroiled in a heated, intense exchange. The man in the frame does not look like a happy groom. He looks like a man in the grip of a sharp, unkind anger. The interpretation that immediately took hold across global commentary led by the astute analysis of the popular account. According to Taz, noted that the exchange appeared to be directed toward the nanny of the Wales family. The small children visible in the background of the frame do not look like they are participating in a joyful celebration. They look wary. They look like children witnessing a moment of adult hostility that they do not understand. For a couple that has spent years complaining about the coldness of the royal institution, to voluntarily publish an image where they themselves look cold, aggressive, and unkind is a move of staggering self-sabotage. How does such an image make it past the gatekeepers? The answer is as simple as it is devastating. There are no gatekeepers left. Tom Sykes of the Daily Beast has reported that the once vaunted Archwell production company has been pared down to a skeletal team of only 2 people. What was once intended to be a global media powerhouse is now, in the dismissive terminology of Hollywood, a mere label. It is a hollowed-out entity that exists in name only. When you have a staff of 2, you do not have a communications department. You do not have a vetting process. You do not have a second pair of eyes to say, "This image makes the prince look like a bully," or "This context will reopen the wounds of the wedding day drama." Instead, you have the digital equivalent of a person scrolling through their own phone in the middle of the night, picking images based on raw emotion rather than strategic value. Whether the post was a deliberate attempt to tell a story or a clumsy accident, both conclusions lead to the same place. The operation is no longer being steered by professionals. It is being steered by instinct, and the instinct is failing. This lack of basic discipline was further exposed by a detail so small, yet so telling, that it has become the focal point of 1,000 jokes. In the anniversary video, intended to mark 8 years of marriage, the production team used imagery of a cake with 4 candles. 4, not 8. In any healthy PR operation, such a discrepancy would be caught in the first 5 seconds of a review. Counting to 8 is not a complex task. Yet, the content went live to 4.5 million people with a glaring error that shouted laziness to the world. There are only 2 logical explanations for the 4 candles. Either the team is so exhausted and disorganized that they simply did not notice the count, or the imagery was repurposed from their 4th anniversary and dropped into the timeline because they lacked the resources or the effort to create something new. Both explanations are catastrophic for a brand that tries to sell itself as a premium lifestyle authority. If you cannot be bothered to get the number of years right in your own wedding anniversary video, why should a consumer trust you to curate their home, their kitchen, or their life? This is the flood, the zone strategy in its most desperate form. When you no longer trust any single piece of content to land with impact, you throw everything at the wall. You mix humanitarian speeches with pop music montages. You mix serious geopolitical posturing with wedding, cake B-roll. But instead of creating a rich tapestry, you create a mess. The audience cannot keep up because the brand itself does not know who it is anymore. One day, Meghan is addressing global health officials in an empty square in Geneva, attempting to position herself as a serious voice on the world stage. 2 days later, she is posing in a rented kitchen, leaning against a window in a soft-focus promotional clip for a lifestyle brand that, as of yet, has no products to ship. These 2 modes do not reinforce each other. They cancel each other out. You cannot be a serious geopolitical advocate on Sunday and a trad wife influencer on Tuesday and expect the world to believe either pose. The 4 candles and the angry wedding photo are not just mistakes. They are the visible symptoms of a brand in a state of total chaos. They reveal an operation that has lost the ability to manage the room before the principal steps into it. In the high-stakes game of global reputation, you are only as good as your last mistake. This weekend, the Sussexes didn't just make 1 mistake, they made a dozen, and they did it in the most public way possible. It is the sound of a machine grinding to a halt, leaving nothing behind but the frantic clicking of a single person trying to maintain an illusion that has already shattered. As we move deeper into the wreckage of this anniversary weekend, we encounter a moment that has caused even the most patient and sympathetic observers to draw a firm, final line. It is the moment where the Sussex project shifted from being a chaotic attempt at a lifestyle brand to something far more cynical. We must talk about the candle. The As Ever brand has been attempting to find its footing throughout the year, launching a steady stream of products that feel more like a desperate search for a revenue stream than a coherent vision. We have seen the jams, the honeys, the marmalades, and the branded packaging. But the pantry video that opened this weekend's content push was not just a promotion of a product line, it was a direct call to shop the complete range, and it was anchored by a release that many found professionally and morally questionable. A new candle, launched specifically to coincide with the 8th anniversary of the royal wedding. To understand why this has triggered such intense criticism, one must look at the source of the brand equity being exploited. The wedding in 2018 was not a private backyard affair. It was a state occasion, a national moment of celebration, underwritten by the significant resources of the British taxpayer and the institutional power of the royal family. It was an event that belonged, in a very real sense, to the public. To take that memory, a memory funded by a nation and a family that the Sussexes have spent the last 6 years publicly criticizing, and turn it into a commercial hook for a $60 candle is a move that reeks of desperation. It is a transactional approach to history. It suggests that there is no part of their past, no matter how sacred or how tied to public service, that cannot be commodified, packaged, and sold to a 4.5 million person mailing list. The criticism on this point has not come from the usual cynics or the professional detractors. It has come from people who have, in the past, been broadly sympathetic to the couple's desire for independence. The argument they are making is simple but devastating. Some things, even within the context of a fully commercial lifestyle brand, you simply do not turn into a candle. A wedding that was paid for by a public you have since abandoned is one of those things. It is the ultimate expression of having your cake and eating it too, or in this case, selling the cake while complaining about the bakery. This is not the first time the Sussex brand has attempted to attach itself to royal prestige for commercial gain. Tom Sykes reported on a similar situation at the beginning of 2026, involving a product launch that appeared to be pointedly tied to the memory of the late Queen Elizabeth. In that instance, the backlash was so swift and so severe that the press release had to be frantically rewritten to reframe the product around the founder's daughter rather than her late majesty. A normal brand operation, having faced such a controversy once, would have triggered an internal review. They would have tightened the approval process to ensure that the brand's identity was protected from the optics of profiteering. But in the Sussex operation, no such tightening has taken place. The candles are being launched as fast as the team can produce them, and the optics are being managed only after the damage has been done. This is not how a serious, high-end lifestyle brand operates. It is how a brand operates when the urgency of generating immediate revenue has completely overtaken the discipline of protecting long-term identity. The as-ever promotional video itself serves as a perfect microcosm of this failure. We see Meghan in the rented farmhouse kitchen, surrounded by the branded products, leaning against a window in a pose that is intended to be aspirational. But the audience is no longer buying the aspiration, they are seeing the transaction. They are seeing a woman who is attempting to sell them a piece of a royal dream that she herself has spent years deconstructing. When you turn your own wedding anniversary into a product launch peg, you are telling the world that your personal milestones are for sale. You are telling your followers that their warmth and their support are actually just leads in a sales funnel. This is why the A-list friends stayed silent. People of genuine status do not want to be the influencer support for a $60 candle. They do not want to be part of a marketing campaign for a brand that is increasingly seen as a Taco Bell version of royalty, fast, commercial, and ultimately lacking in substance. The tragedy of the candle is that it reveals the vacuum at the heart of the Sussex project. If the brand were truly about service, as they once claimed, it would not be focused on marmalade and wax. Nếu thương hiệu thực sự về phong cách sống, nó đã có thể đứng vững trên chính đôi chân của nó mà không cần phải liên tục đào bới lại những ký ức từ Vương triều Anh. The fact that they must return to the wedding of 2018 to find a hook for their sales proves that they have failed to create anything of value in the years since they left. 8 years later, the wedding is no longer a symbol of hope or a bridge between cultures. It has been reduced to a marketing category. It is a peg for a press release. It is a background image for a website. This is the ultimate humiliation of the Sussex brand. They have taken the most photographed, most celebrated moment of their lives and turned it into a trinket. And as the world watched in silence this weekend, the message was clear. You cannot turn a national duty into a hoor-nen and expect the world to keep applauding. The audience has moved on, and the only thing left in the room is the smell of a candle that no one asked for and few are willing to buy. This is the price of trying to build a kingdom on a foundation of commerce rather than character. You end up with a brand that is a mile wide but only an inch deep, where every I do was just a precursor to how much, and where the only thing left of an 8-year marriage is a price tag and a rented kitchen. This is the week the whole thing finally started visibly unraveling, not because of what the palace did, but because of what the Sussexes chose to sell. As we stand amidst the smoldering ruins of this anniversary weekend, we are forced to look at the other side of the royal story, the side that remains anchored in the reality of duty rather than the mirage of celebrity. While one side of the family was busy managing a kitchen that has become a national metaphor and a candle that crossed every line of professional decency, King Charles III found himself the subject of a very different kind of public moment. While attending a public engagement, the king was, in the most polite possible phrasing, targeted by a passing bird. The footage made its rounds across the digital landscape, but the reaction from the monarch was characteristically good-humored and dry. British folk tradition holds that such an occurrence is actually a sign of good luck, and Charles handled it with the same unbothered composure upon which his entire reign has been built. The contrast is as sharp as a diamond. In the Sussex camp, we saw a photograph of a prince caught in a moment of visible, heated anger, a man who, even on his wedding day, appeared unable to master his own temper. On the other side, we saw a king who can face a public indignity with a smile and a shrug. One man is a slave to his own narrative, constantly editing and re-editing his past to fit a story of victimhood. The other is a servant of an institution that has lasted 1,000 years and is in no particular hurry to change its pace for the sake of a social media algorithm. This is not to say that the king does not face his own inherited storms. This same week, the first batch of official documents related to Prince Andrew's appointment as a trade envoy was released by the government. The records show a lack of formal security vetting and an internal memo suggesting that the late Queen Elizabeth was very keen for her son to take on the role, despite his lack of qualification. This is a genuine institutional wound, a politically sensitive release that Charles cannot simply rewrite. Yet, look at how the two operations handle their respective crises. The king continues the steady, unshowy work of moving the institution forward, quietly removing the problematic elements from visible roles, and allowing the steady drip of history to resolve itself through transparency and discipline. There is no flooding of the zone. There are no $60 candles launched to distract from the headlines. There is only the work. Meanwhile, in California, the desperation has reached such a pitch that the Sussex operation has begun floating the idea of a vow renewal. The framing being tested is that they never got the wedding they truly deserved, that the institution denied them the celebration they wanted, and that a new ceremony would finally set the record right. But read that framing against the reality of this weekend's silence. They had one of the most star-studded weddings in the history of the modern world. 8 năm sau, chính giới thượng lưu đó đã đồng loạt từ chối đánh dấu ngày kỷ niệm của họ. The strategic question sitting in front of the operation is no longer about the vows. It is about the guest list. If you cannot get Oprah Winfrey or the Clooneys to post a single heart emoji for your 8th anniversary, how do you expect to fill a room for a second wedding? The silence of the A-list is a warning that the vow renewal would not be a celebration of love, but a public audit of their social bankruptcy. This weekend was the moment the zone strategy finally collapsed under its own weight. As the journalist Paula Frolic observed, the approach of throwing everything at the wall is what you do when you have stopped trusting any single piece of content to land on its own. You cannot be a serious geopolitical voice on Sunday, a victim of the palace on Monday, and an aspirational lifestyle influencer on Tuesday. These identities cancel each other out, leaving behind a brand that is everything and nothing all at once. The most damaging detail of the entire weekend remains that number, 8. 8 years since the world stood still to watch them. 8 years to move from a guest list of global titans to a tribute roster of airline crew who were briefed in advance. 8 years to move from a £2 million renovation at Frogmore to a rented farmhouse kitchen that serves as a backdrop for a mirage. You cannot manufacture warmth. You cannot buy the genuine endorsement of the people who actually run the world. And you certainly cannot turn a kitchen your neighbors are mocking into the center of a lifestyle empire. The Sussexes have spent 6 years trying to prove that they could do it better than the institution they left behind. But as the silence of this anniversary proved, the institution is still there, steady and unbothered, while the Sussex operation is currently a skeleton crew of 2 people, a rented set, and a flickering candle. The silence of this weekend was not just an absence of sound, it was a verdict. It was the world's way of saying that the drama has become exhausting, the commercialization has become distasteful, and the brand has become a cautionary tale. 8 years on, the most photographed couple in the world has found that while everyone is still watching, fewer and fewer people are actually cheering. The kitchen tells one story about the finances. The silence tells a different and perhaps more final story about where the social relationships actually stand. Both became impossible to ignore this weekend. And as the king continues his steady walk through the gardens of duty, the Sussexes are left in a rented room, staring at a cake with 4 candles, wondering where everyone went. The question is no longer whether they can course correct. The question is whether there is anything left to save. What do you think is the most damaging detail of this entire chaotic weekend? Drop your take below and ensure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next chapter of this unfolding collapse. Your support helps us reach more people who are looking for the truth behind the soft focus filters. We will see you in the next analysis.